Hi, Peter.
Good
Adam.
morning.
So I've had some more emails from Stefan Koitzer, and I think he's making some very fair points. He's feeling that there isn't really a hypertext Engelbart Nelson style community effort here. He's absolutely right. There isn't, and I've asked him to try to better communicate what he wants that to be, and he started doing that in emails. He tends to watch our videos. Hi, Stefan. I know you're watching. And then write me long, long emails. And I'm supposed to be the text guy, but it's too much text, and he knows that, so it's kind of funny. But I think it's a really fair thing for him to be agitating us like this, because it's coming from a good place. And we have to decide, if we really are doing something, what are we doing? It's been all over the place for a while. Now it's a little bit focused on visual meta, of course, and people have different ideas of what should be done. But do you guys, even while we're waiting for the rest, have any thoughts on more, let's pretend we have a distributed lab and we are actually collaborating? Is that something you want to do, or is that something you have resources to do? And yeah, all three of you are quite technical, so I think it's good to ask the three of you that as a beginning question.
I'd like to see us working on a shared code base and building things that work.
Hi, Mark. Just really quickly, just asking the guys if they do want to work on a specific, as Peter now says, code base, just seeing what the feeling is, what we want to do and what we can do. Okay, Peter, that was a very positive reply. What about you, Adam, the new boy in the team? And you're muted. No, you're not actually. That's just something with your mic. But again, you're Swedish, so maybe we just don't understand you. Maybe it's
Yes.
that.
Talk to us loudly and slowly.
Just scream. No, still can't hear you. Just check your input sources. I had problems with that. While we're waiting for you, Gunter, what is your situation? I'm not saying we should. I just want to have clarity. Do you want to actually build the thing together, or is it a lot of experimenting? And yeah, anyway, me stop, you start.
Well, I'm afraid I can't give a short answer to this because, well, first of all, I have my own perspective, and from my perspective, things are rather complicated, and I'm not sure whether I can respond with a few sentences. I don't think that's possible. I could, so I'm doing some experiments right now, and eventually I could summarize the most important points. Many of them are of technological nature, and so there are really lots of angles to collaboration. I mean, as far as in traditionally, I mean, there are large, really large projects like, I don't know, the Linux operating system, for instance, which started actually very small. But then Linus managed to build this huge community around him, and that's certainly one of the parts why they are so successful, because they had the chance to build this huge community. And so for things to move forward, certainly I think a good idea to share some code, which Stefan mentioned that he would find it very important, and we could certainly do that. However, I'm very but I have very specific viewpoints regarding to building things, and I just don't feel it's probably not productive if I commented on this, because I don't want to dissuade any efforts to work together on projects. Maybe this is a side discussion that we could have at some point.
What about you, Adam?
Can you hear me now?
Sorry? No, just kidding. We can hear you.
So there are several answers to this question. And one is sharing kind of visual prototypes. I think that could be a very fruitful way to both find out things for ourselves, but also for the wider text toolmaker community and or text people in general, to really find out what we want more as a, like, visual prototypes or interactive prototypes. And they can be in a way less serious. And I do almost every day, I do something, a small prototype, visual prototype, testing something, an interaction, for example. And I think that could be super useful to discuss in a group. And even if you don't code anything, I think you would, most of us are, or all of us are of course users of these systems. So you can have opinions and or new ideas or old ideas as well.
I think that's a good point. I don't know, I posted a link to a tweet in the chat here. It's Matthew Sue, who both Mark and I came across today. He does some really cool stuff. So of course I've invited him to the Future of Text book. But what makes me, when I'm honest with myself, really angry is that we don't have a liquid space yet. And Gunther, that's not a dig at you, because Chris and I worked on it, not at all a dig at you. Even if there was a normally commercially available one, because Stefan Koitzer is a good guy. Him and I disagree on a lot, and that's fine. But we need a basic thing where disparate people like us can come together on a whiteboard type thing. And maybe we just have to try something, maybe Figma or whatever. And I draw down, I'm doing the document, visual meta stuff. Here's a link to more, blah, blah, blah. And then Stefan will say, oh, well, the underlying stuff needs to be all the stuff I hardly understand anything about. And then Gunther in a separate corner will start writing something, and just so we have a whiteboard. Because our dream of being Xerox PARC or Doug's Lab or whatever it is, even though we're distributed, even though we have other jobs, the whiteboard thing, just look at here in the UK, Dominic Cummings. No, that's just, no one's going to understand that except for Mark Anderson. You know, our whole government strategy on the whiteboard, you know, who shall we kill next, quite literally. Are there any things we can use for that now? Because it used to be, hey, let's all blog. But until you can see it, who's working on this, how it connects, how it doesn't connect, you can do it in author, of course you can, but that's just one person. You know, to have a way to update and say thing and stuff, it seems like a crucial piece of the puzzle, right, guys?
Yeah, we want a spatial hypertext.
Yeah,
spatial hypertext map.
We do, we desperately do. And Stefan has been really fucking annoying, just to be honest, but he has been annoying from an angry, good place that I respect. And I will either have to tell him to bugger off. I've actually told him to reduce some of the negative, like he today wrote that visual meta is like 1490 or something because it's early printing technology. It's like, oh, shut up, right? But he is right to prod us, isn't he? And we have right to fight back, but we should have a place where someone comes into the community, because this circle thing we have is nice, but it's not an overview of what's happening. Yeah, Gunther.
Well, just a quick thought of this, and it's more of a exercise in reflection, I guess, is that I think there are reasons why we are in the situation we are in right now. And perhaps it's good to do some reflection why this is the case. And of course, I mean, the problem is there's lots of politics involved, but many issues are of the technological nature, and it's all fine to of course build new software to test out prototypes. So let me just give you an example. But then I have to re-clarify or to retract my statement. Not to, I don't want that people get the wrong idea, but just think about Brad Victor. So he has done some very amazing demos, and they're really eye-opening, and I really like his line of thinking, and there's just so much to what he has to say. But there has been one criticism, and the criticism was that he has never released any code. I don't know if that's true any longer, but there even has been a discussion about this issue. But unfortunately, I lost the reference. And well, I think he has a good reason why he doesn't do that, because what he really is trying to do, I mean, though we can't speak for him, but he's just showing us all these perspectives. But the demos are just building the next new product. It could be also a dangerous trap. So, and I see that all too often working with different kinds of software environments, where you just try to push your idea forward, but um, but there's so much stuff that has been built around it that you have to work through, so that eventually you come to the realization, no, I can't really build that thing that I'm trying to build, and that's because there are too many assumptions already in the software environment that I'm using. And while this is an obvious statement, I don't think that there is enough awareness about this issue, because this problem is occurring over and over again. And this is something that I don't take lightly. Just as an example, some people, for instance, say, well, it doesn't matter what programming language you're using, it's just the idea that matters, and it's fine. So you basically just do the work. And it's a very dangerous assumption, because changing, for instance, the choice of a language, it's not a simple matter. And in fact, already that choice limits on what you can actually do. But it's not just about programming languages. It's just an example. So that's which, I'm sorry, just one thing, which doesn't mean that we shouldn't share code or build prototypes, because of course it's important to figure out what other people in the community are doing, and to see something, to be able to interact with something, because you can't build everything. No person can build everything at once. But I'm just saying, in addition to this, that for a next generation or for a hypertext system, it's very important to get the assumptions or the unwritten assumptions straight, because otherwise we'll end up with the next web. So Tim Berners-Lee web browser, and I think he had some very nice solutions, but it wasn't the finished thing, and in the long term it caused lots of troubles.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Gunther. Good to see you, Jerry. By the way, Peter and Jerry, it was fun last night with the event. I just had to lurk. I had things going on with the family. Anyway, yes, but I know you also agree that we cannot let that completely immobilize us. So of course we have to find ways to go about it. And I really think that, first of all, we need this gosh darn map so we can refer to each other. I think that'll be crucial. That can be web-based. It doesn't need to be any underlying technology. It can just simple, stupid stuff in this context. And then we have to do things like visual meta on different levels. We have to have interoperability, so that, let's say, Gunther, you and Jerry compete in a similar space, and it turns out one works and the other doesn't. As long as you could somehow share some of the data, that's useful, right? We need a Cambrian explosion. We had that in the 60s. We had a little bit of it in the 80s. And now we are basically turning into coal, if you want to take a geological, the atmosphere is bad. Things are not even composting properly. We're making coal. So we have to map out, and then we have to fight and argue much more along the issues you're talking about, and then build small stuff at the side we can throw away. I mean, this is why I have reader and authors, two separate pieces of software. You should be able to, whether it's a document or other data, Gunter's work didn't work out there. I'm going to try it in Adam's world. I can open it up there, etc. And yes, the data thing itself will be wrong. Of course it will. We're not going to know exactly the right metadata and we're going to make mistakes there too. But guys, if we don't work on this, you all agree it's not going to be a good thing, right? Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, just reflecting on something you just said, and what you were asking about contribution to code base. I mean, I think I can safely say that I know enough about coding to be dangerous, but on the other hand, enough about it to at least, I mean, you know, I respect the skills involved, and I sort of know there's almost my backside points downwards. I'm never going to be a skilled coder, but the place where I can probably help actually is more in the sort of the interface, and sort of the, not so much formal documentation, but being able to say to people, this is unexplainable to the audience, which is where so many of these technical systems fall apart. And as good as brought out this point about assumptions, I mean, this is something where maybe we should be spending more time, because it seems to come back to, you know, both sides batting the ball backwards and forwards. So the people who are not on the technical side of the fence saying, well, we just need to make the small change. And someone said, oh, well, now you've changed assumptions. If you told me, you know, you told me we were going to do this, we've used a different tool. So there's a lot of on-the-surface stuff on both sides. Yeah. And so rather than rushing off to build something, what we want, it seems more sense to draw from both sides onto that interface and do the mapping, so that we don't waste time actually going and building stuff that we just have to tear down and do again. Or we find that in the time that we're looking at it, actually a much better things come along, and we can start with a tool that really much better maps it. So I think actually it's the sort of, it's the boundary assumptions that are there. Because I mean, I certainly come from a pragmatic point of view that whilst it's lovely to make mind palaces and have things to aspire to, we've also got to get from here to there, and we've got to deal with, you know, large amounts of legacy stuff where we can't just, you know, it's of such volume that we can't just say, well, it's a do-over, or we get rid of it completely, because that way madness lies, and we, you know, we'll lose far too much.
But one thing, I mean, complete agreement, and thank you for offering that. I think it would be worthwhile, and I'm happy to set up yet another office hour a week just for moaning, right? So a lot of what Günther says is moaning, and moaning is not necessarily a bad thing. There are things that, we're not talking about first world problems, my towel is too pink. We're talking about underlying things, just to moan and record that, and try to record that in a bigger space, both video and written, so that as people join the community, they can learn that. It is really, really important. I also think that we should choose different times for different implementations. For instance, on our monthly meeting this week, which I found horrifically horrible, it was really tough, which is fine, but, you know, I survived, I'm still here. This is not a hologram or even 2D fake. But one of the things we discussed there, and I would really like some time for that today, is, as we discussed often, how can we make the Future of Text Volume 2 more interactive, more future, the book itself? That is a very different discussion for how do we do tools for thoughts. Very different from authorships, different from a lot of things, right? So if we talk about text or knowledge and general things always, we're just going to be a model, right? So just on a specific point on that, I wrote stuff that turned out to be nonsense, and I blogged it. I wrote that a table of contents is both a navigational aid and an introduction to a document. And as I kept working on that, I realized it is not an introduction to the document. Because when you open a book, there are so many pages before you get to the table of contents. And if you, even with visual meta, remove the table of content to do a more definitive, interesting other thing, you still have that other crud. So we have to look at, if we're going to have a new model of a book, what will that be? What will be the top level navigation people have? You know, these are important and difficult questions. My answers are my answers at this point, and it's all fun. It comes down to flexibly changing views and stuff. But if we could have discussions around specifics, like we say Mondays or whatever, is all about how can we make reading a multi-authored document like Future of Text amazing while still having a document at the end of the day. Would that be useful? So we have at least one day that's about one single implementation, maybe?
Say something. Anybody else was there on yesterday? A vision? Anybody?
I couldn't make it, sadly.
Well, when it comes out, and Frode, you didn't attend, did you? Did you
Yeah, I did
attend?
attend, but I had to lurk because while listening, there was things going on at home. So
Yeah, what I'm saying, that was an amazing 3-4 talks, and they actually articulated many really key issues, and I think we really should have ourselves should have a session when hopefully will be published on Monday or whatever. At some point when everybody actually studies it, I will actually do some write up, and I'm sure Boris will write a summary. So you may not have the hour or more, but and actually the outcome of this was, as you know, that they're going to set up a sort of little community for the exchange question. But the exchange question is actually a really good sort of Archimedean point to this whole, to all these related issues. And I think I would disagree, Frode, to the extent that the this is something I did propose and I didn't get any response. But basically, the book too, whatever way it is produced, it obviously got to be produced in such a way that at least leave it open to exchange. And so this initiative of doing the exchange, it will actually provide the right context where people say, okay, here is this. Is it coming in Word? It doesn't matter. It's coming in some format. It would be a really good shared test set, if you like, as well. So and then we could actually engage, because all these tools for thoughts are the ethos. I'm very deeply in this context. Even Rome is acknowledging that it is really, these tools must complete each other and not compete. Not because they are generous or anything. It's simply the problem of writing or being active in this space. People
yeah,
are different. They have different expectations, different skills, different sensibilities. So something that satisfies my needs, I'm sure it won't others.
oh, absolutely. But also, it is really, really important to take into account, as I'm sure you do, that different environments are for very, very different things. I mean, we are publishing a book, and that is a statement that people have thoughtfully put together to give to the world. It's not a distributed cognitive map in a graph space. Just
No,
is.
but
No, I'm not saying you're saying that, Jerry. I'm just saying that.
yeah, but I do say that in this day and age, books should be open to that possibility.
It should be open completely, absolutely, to go in. I mean, I want people not only to be able to cite the book, but also to take the whole book into that. Yes, I completely agree with that. But it's just that it seems it's kind of like people on a street corner arguing whether football or baseball is best because they both like balls, right? There's such different games for such different purposes, that it seems like now it's very fashionable that you should think in hard quotes. That's how you make a link thing, right? That's a big thing, and that's great, but it's not necessarily what you want when you're reading a book, for instance. So all I was saying when you were coming in is that in this community, at least, let's just decide on what sessions we talk about, what kind of implementations. One of them has to be, what do we do with our book? If we're going to have another one that is more about networked thought, which is close to what you and Gunter work on, that would be fantastic. It's a different thing. But I've been going in so many circles of this for so many years, I just get worried that things could easily get muddled. That's all. So it's a supportive and an agreeing thing. Mr. Sorry.
Well, just coming at it from a pragmatic perspective, one of the things I was thinking there is, I mean, we're in a sort of closed loop between the fact that, well, we haven't, we're stuck at the technological end because we don't know quite what the answer is. We have the aspirational side in the sort of more human thing that we want to have this open thing. So maybe part of it is even if we don't have specific tools in place, or we have a choice, is to sort of describe how we think that the book might be used, and to think of it in terms of, so what metadata, what extra affordances do we have to build into our otherwise, so more than just writing words on a piece of paper and making that into a facsimile on the screen, what other information do we have to package around that, such that some of the things that we can't do at the moment, but we want to come to pass? So there are things that I think we can probably start to say that we know will be needed. And we know that we're not doing that at the moment. So one of the steps is to say that even if we can't use this extra stuff we're making it in the knowledge that it's needed to do these other steps that may be happening in parallel, they may happen later. And that might just slightly get us out of this loop we seem to be in.
Yeah, I think that's completely the way to go. And Jury, I would love for you to take our current book and try to parse it into your system. And wherever you feel I could have done something different in producing the book, that would be a fantastic point of discussion for volume 2. Because PDF, even with visual meta, is shit, there's no question. But there's one version of it, because I'm so excited about this being read in 1,000 years, has to go on a gosh darn bookshelf. But that should not in any way exclude it from being exploded into a million pieces in your brain.
Yeah, I mean, I started and I realized I have to redo it because actually I've done my I've done my annotations in a pre-release version. So I thankfully I'm just building this so I can take my existing annotations into Minecraft, and hopefully I haven't done this, but this is something that it makes sense to do. Is because if I already capable of getting the annotations into Minecraft, it shouldn't be too difficult to say, okay, here is a next version of this document.
Yep.
Please automatically add those annotations.
Yeah,
because that so you're not logged in. But I really think that I'm 100% behind Dan Whaley. I think annotations is the key, because that's a kind of portal to conversations.
it certainly is a key, no question about it. And I would
Right, yeah. But in terms of this is he been pioneering interoperability, ubiquity for the last 10 years, basically.
I mean, I would be very happy if the first page of the book just had a bunch of links to the book in different forms. Here's the hypothesis way to read the book. I'd be very, very happy to have that. And most of them will die over time, but who cares? We will learn something, right?
No, they won't. I mean, this is the one thing that really holds this community together that met on Thursday. This is why they gravitate to IPFS and Fission, because it actually offers a technical possibility of creating permanent text.
Yeah, I'm not saying all of them will die, and the ones who don't die will be fantastic. Let me just show you
Yes,
something.
you're right. Normally things die like that, yes.
Yeah, I mean, and some of them do. So I just wanted to show you the conclusion of what I've been working on. Oh yeah, Mark, go on, sorry.
No, it's all right. I'll butt in later. It doesn't have to come before this.
Oh, okay. I was just, the whole discussion back and forth, not to waste your time. This is my personal current way of handling the reading aspect, right? So the goal I set myself is to solve the problem of, it's a huge, massive book, lots of authors. What should I read next? That is the question, right? So what we have here is a screenshot of Reader. And then at the bottom of the screen, there's a little kind of a tool panel that is modeled after author. So the idea is really, really simple. It is just an interface where the tool panel at the bottom is not visible until you either select text or you wiggle your mouse around. Mm-hmm. That's really important because it should, in my personal view, it should be minimalist. So let me walk you through what it says. Bottom left, table of contents, command minus. Each one of these have to show the keyboard shortcut because we want people to learn the keyboard shortcut, right? Mm-hmm. Bottom right is a little X. That just means hide this thing. I figured it out. I know the keyboard shortcuts. But the middle bits is what I wanted to highlight. And again, this is my perspective for how to read a visual meta PDF. I'm sure others will have billions of other ideas. there's two separate types of things, reading from right to left. Click N, as you can now, and it'll collapse the document to show only names and headings, which is kind of useful. Also show similar articles. So whatever is on screen is considered the current article, and it'll analyze and it'll just, in a find view, show all the articles that are similar by whatever criteria, that kind of stuff. And then there's something called like or dislike. So as you go through, let's say this article I don't like, I just click there or I press D. That means that in the folded outline, not the hard-coded one in the beginning, this article is grayed out and moved to the bottom. Because when you go through a book, there's a lot of stuff you're not really interested in, you just kind of get rid of it. So actually, from your active table of contents, it's disappeared. Right? And it's not a social network, so other people don't see that. This is only for yourself. Right? And then, as we already have, if you do highlights and then you do a collapse or fold, all your highlights will show. So it is a way to just put lots of experimental functions to help someone to go through the document. The reason I arrived at this is if the top of the screen thing, these menus, people don't use, unless you have to because you're in Photoshop, right? Control clicking, only nerds like us really know how to do that usually. So it is just a way to do it. And I hope that we can discuss alternatives to this. I hope we can discuss how maybe we can have a button here that is add this to a trail or load an annotation for this. This thing at the bottom here is the magic space for putting things. Yeah, Mark, and then Jerry.
Okay, a very quick one. Actually, funny you were going back to your thing on the table of contents. I was browsing and I found in here, but it was effectively. No, I'm not going to show you any more books. Anyway, this one was saying that actually the table of contents really actually started out to help you to assemble the book. It wasn't a navigational tool, and it wasn't a citation tool. So that rather chimes with what you were saying. But anyway, more importantly. I apologize for this. Housekeeping brought something, so I'm not complaining. Looking at the thing you said, the only thing that, well, the similar thing I thought is interesting because that's the gateway into all the really cool, wonderful interlinked stuff. I wondered about the like dislike. I get your point, but I think it hides two things. Actually, it's saying, do I understand this or I don't understand it? Because often I don't like it doesn't make sense. So it's an understanding thing. And then there's the other face of it is, do I disagree or agree? In other words, I don't just not like it. I disagree because I think it's, I have an alternative view, an alternative thesis to this. The problem slightly with the sort of like and dislike is it's an emotive shell that doesn't give us, might give me the author. If I write it and read it, I accept that I might know. But I don't think it had a wider use. And I'm just conscious that one of the things we're talking about here is reuse and sharing. So I would want to unpack that a bit more and train myself that when I say I don't like this, to actually explain, to record and tell my future self what I meant by that.
Maybe, or maybe the label is wrong and you want to just label it as not relevant for now.
Sure. Yeah. All I mean is that I see the sort of the nice encapsulation of like dislike, but I think what it does is then obfuscates all the richness that lies inside that observation.
And that's exactly the kind of design discussions, how much towards social media norms do we go? How far towards the rich interaction for the future? Yeah.
Well, I think we need to nudge ourselves so that, it's the old Ford thing, if we ask, will people say they want a faster horse buggy? And I think so. I think likes are tremendously annoying, and they're used in very, there's something wrong with them, but they're used in different ways in different places. So, and the sort of strands that I think we want to capture in terms of annotation of more than, sort of entertainment stuff, is that, so yes, I have a view on this. I support it, or I agree with it, or I disagree with it. So there, and I'm probably the worst person to unpack this because I'm not steeped in argumentation and things. And we don't want to go to, the thing that broke annotation in link types in early hypertext, which was Randy Trigg's hypothesis that worked out that there were supposedly 148 different sort of arguments you could have. That's too much, but somewhere in the middle ground.
Well, this is a really important point, Mark, because I did this as kind of a provocation, but I could imagine that, to integrate with jury's work, you come across an article like this and you want a really quick way to add that as a specifically interesting trail for your future, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because when I designed this thing, like was not interesting. What was interesting for me was dislike. When you go through big volumes, a lot of stuff you're just not interested in.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
But for us to really dig into this and then to really not muddle the cake is, as we said earlier, what does jury want? What does Gunther want in their environments? Do they want the whole book? Do they want to cite it? Do they want to overlay it? Do they want knowledge extraction?
I think maybe we should tease out dislike from discard. I think what you're really talking about is you want to discard sections at the time being, not that you dislike them. That's a completely different relationship. If I've actually like read the sentence and the ideas in it are just totally pernicious to my mind, then I dislike it. But if it's not relevant to me and not germane at the moment, I just want to discard it until later. And then all that stuff in the back is sort of your hold pile that you can go to draw another card down the road when you want something new to look at when you're in a fresh state of mind.
I just renamed it Hide. So yeah, it could, that definitely, yeah, but Adam, you had the thought.
So is there any possibility of defining those actions or likes and dislikes, discards yourself? So not as much as tags for topics, but more as for your process, because often I just want to mark things, but you may not like that, just having many marks, and a mark may like to have other verbs. So actually having more free form, it's kind of jury's special hyper tools. But I think even for text, it could be nice to have a keyboard shortcut and your own verb.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough for people who are that advanced. And of course, it's not that far-fetched to be able to annotate with different colors depending on what you like.
But it's also language mapping. I mean, human language mapping, not computer language mapping. I can't annotate in Japanese, and if I was a Japanese writer, they may not speak English. So being able to have
this is not for annotation. Annotation is an important other thing. The reason for this is just you have a large book in front of you. How should the table of contents be ordered? By title, by author's name, by geography? Oh, is it where they were born or where they're working? By timeline, by age, by size? This is some of the stuff we talked about recently. Most of them are irrelevant. They're not interesting at all. So what I'm just thinking about is, as you have this document, you're going through it a little bit. Once you have a little bit of a sense, how can you surface what's more interesting and hide what is currently not interesting? And we must have many more ways of doing that.
Well, maybe we need to sort of do a bit of practical exercise and, take some actual books, digital documents, whatever, and actually lay those questions back onto it. So, what are the things, in two ways, which are, what are the things that's completely, inappropriate or impossible to do with this document? What are the things that's missing, i.e. extra metadata in our forward-going writing process would have to be added to what was there, and what is unhelpful or what can be allowed to wither. What is just there, like Roman cart tracks that we don't really need to worry about. They're there because, well, they're there, but they don't have great import going forward, and we wouldn't wish them to be constraints. So they have historical relevance. They've got a legacy relevance if you're looking at things, but we wouldn't want to necessarily take them forward as, for instance, as design constraints or something, or as assumptions, because they actually have no validity going forward.
I expect we'll be discussing that tomorrow at midnight over a large bottle of port. Yeah, we're having a big party. It's kind of my birthday party. Also incorporating a lot of my son's friends during the day, and in the evening, Mark is the only one of you invited because he's the only one in the country. So I hope in the future that will not be the case.
There are some upsides to being British then these days.
Yeah, well, hopefully you will enjoy tomorrow. There will be plenty of this and that. By the way, the meal will be buffet. It will be Palestinian Syrian food.
Cool. That's good for me.
Yeah, that's kind of special for me. But anyway, so these, I guess we can say that for a while, we're really focused on a digital version of the book. And we really need to have people come in and fight, like jury saying, well, if you're going to have a gosh darn PDF, you need to have this as well. And we just experiment and experiment and experiment, right?
Yeah, I've certainly, I was just talking to Fred earlier, one of the things I was going to do was take a thankfully short paper I did for Hypertext last year and just sort of go back, reimagine it. So, you know, what does the actual visual meta for this look like? I'm trying to do the mapping process because to a certain extent, I think we have a really interesting and good concept. And I certainly would admit the bit I haven't quite resolved is how I write for it, how I interact with it. So I understand its value, and I'd like to see it, you know, act as a bridging technology with a very small t to the future. The bit I haven't quite got my head around is sort of, well, what am I actually putting in there, and what am I, well, sorry, two things. Let me step back. What comes automatically out of the text, whether the tool does it or not, but that could be an expectation. And what, as the author, I'm going to need to think about to make it a richer and more useful reference.
I think we're mostly focused on the reader because a lot of the authors are not as involved as us. But if we can give them useful means of adding, I mean, I am asking all the authors to consider using author for this volume. And they should feel free to use Word as long as it's one of those two formats.
Well, that's a very germane point too, which is, well, in this middle ground, like for instance, you get sent something by someone we want to have in the book. We want to have a richer thing. How would we sort of post edit to add an enrichment layer? Because what this boils down to is having an approachable understanding of the metadata aspect of this. So they know, why is there an empty box at the end of the thing? We haven't put the handholds in the input in order to create the output. That's sort of basically what I'm about to start trying to do in practical terms. Yeah. Because it's this bridging thing between the lovely Mind Palace idea where it's all shiny and wonderful, we know it has some value, and me sitting down with an empty document and thinking, okay, how do I make this happen?
But if we think about it in kind of sci-fi terms, right? For the next couple of 100 years, we will, I believe, have no more powerful reading environment than exactly the laptops we have today. I'm talking about reading. I'm not talking about general knowledge work, right? Because it is kind of a book form and it's on a platform. You can tilt it how you want. So let's not worry about technology. Let's not worry about AR, VR, whatever, AI, or any of those things. So then, microfiche, yes, indeed. So then the question becomes almost Harry Potter style. Here is a reader who has given us the most sacred gift, which is their time. They've opened a document that we have collaboratively made. We want them to get maximum utility out of this document. What kind of affordances can we give them? That's the question. You know, that's just rephrasing what you said, Mark, right?
Yeah.
So that's half of it. The other half is how can they take this with them into another space, right? These are really, really key things. And I think there's a lot there. There's a lot of meat. You know, how much of this should be in an annotation space? Maybe everything plus more. You know, how does this function as part of the trail when you're in a trail hub? You know, because some of reading is basically just taking a line, it goes in your head, next line goes in your head, then you do a search. That's just how humans are. Can we put rockets under that? Can we make it, well, hang on, I'm going to do Minority Reports style interaction out of this? You know, it's incredible the opportunity we have. And now that Vint may do an NFT purchase, that means, you know, I'm going to be talking to him soon, but I expect that we can use some of that money to implement some of these ideas. So at least there can be a little bit aliveness.
But which constraints are we allowed to challenge in this thought experiment? Because I think the notion of the page as a pretty fixed thing that is not adapted to the contents, even the paragraph that is with line breaks in the middle of sentences, and it's insanity in the digital world. If you would design it from scratch, even sentences would look completely different. So
I no longer agree, and I will tell you why. Because Ted once, one of the most beautiful definitions of hypertext, which he hasn't really repeated, is I am for the God of the author and the God of the reader, right? So I really think it's important that the author or editor should be able to produce, here is a framed work. This is what I'm saying. This layout means something to me. This font means something to me. But then you as the reader, absolutely, you should be able to say, F that.
But
I want it.
I'm not talking. We're not disagreeing about that. I think no. What I'm saying is that even as an author, I have a fixed PDF size that I need to fit my content into. As an author, I'm constrained by the paragraph and by the page because it's not a continuous scroll. So I'm saying a different thing.
Fine. Here. Okay, well, let me fight you on that then. Let's arm wrestle. Right. First of all, in the book, it really doesn't matter how, you're not constrained like you're doing a scientific paper. If you go a little over, some of the pages have almost nothing on them. Some go a little over. That's one thing. When it comes to continuous scroll, I hate that. Because what happens in effect, especially when you read on the phone, right? You tend to read the top third and then you scroll up because it's continuous scroll. There is something bizarre there. But if it's full page, you read it and you go to the next page. But that doesn't matter. That's my opinion, right? And I'm producing a book for print as well. If you want to talk about how we can make a reading mode for the book be exactly what you're saying, completely agree with you. Right. So even if you as an author feel like, okay, this intermediary is annoying, I want it to be this, we should provide a way for the author and the reader to both get that.
Okay, but I really challenge the very notion of producing digital books for that format.
But it's not just digital. That's really, really important. It is so. I'm an old guy. I'm going to be 53 next week.
But right? Let's print posters then. Let us print big posters, very jumbo volumes, and put them in the archives.
It's
because most of the books will be read in digital from now on. I think the future textbook. It will be read in digital and archive it as a big poster, continuous scroll. Take an old matrix printer and print it. So
we are still looking at printing it onto metal or plastic as a huge sheet. So yes.
Then I can have my page size that I really want, a big poster with the zoom that I can zoom in and out of.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm terribly late. I got a client very desperate for a conference.
That's fine. I was going to email you afterwards. You're just in the middle of a fist fight between Adam and me because he wants continuous scroll and I want pages. But the point is, Adam, this book will be both. Sorry, someone texted. It will be.
Yeah,
both.
But which one is priority or which one is the first really here? That is what I'm questioning. Okay. Should we take the continuous scroll and then cut it into pieces and staple it together into a book? Or should we take the pages from a book and staple it together to a digital document? I argue that we should start digital and then print it on the poster, cut it to pager and put it in a binder, basically. That's a perspective I have on it.
No, that's fine, but I do not agree with you. Okay, and we can continue this discussion, but the fact that we don't agree is not necessarily a bad thing, right? When it comes to the reading experience, if you want to read it as a continuous scroll or whatever, it honestly should be possible, right? These are things we must consider. The fact that we don't agree means there should be options for it, right? So,
but isn't it easier to cut things into pages afterwards, then do the opposite. Take a whole that is the post. In a way, I think it is.
I don't think so, because with the longevity thing.
On my iPad, I always read ebooks as continuous scrolls because it's nicer. It doesn't make sense to have a page flip in a digital device, basically.
Don't you feel that you keep reading the top third of the page and then you keep constantly scrolling rather than using the page?
Yes,
Yeah.
totally. I completely agree with that, but I prefer that over having to page flip on a digital device.
So, okay, fair enough. But the point is, the book currently is mostly text. It should be more images, right? That we should be able to do more concept mappy things with the book. We should be able to do that inherently in the book as well, right? So I do believe that a paragraph as a unit has value. The paragraph in relation to an image and links has value, right? So it is just one way of phrasing it. But Adam, your point about you having a different preference and different affordances is so important. I just have to repeat myself. When you open the document, ideally, it should be that. The underlying substrate, it shouldn't matter. But the reason I'm so hard-headed on this is that PDF is the only media that I know where we can put the meta and the body on the same level. In HTML, it's all hidden.
Or
Because
plain
all-
text. In plain text, you can do that.
Yeah, but in plain text, you don't have formatting.
In PowerPoint, you can do that.
Yeah, in PowerPoint you can, but let me just finish. In plain text, you can't easily have images formatting and stuff. I think that formatting is really important to convey meaning and images. But the thing is, it really has to be readable in the far distant future. And I think PDFs are so pervasive. I mean, Mark was there the day, one of the first days me doing my PhD, I presented a big thing about Doug and information and liquid and all of that. And then I said, PDF is awful. And I was slaughtered. They were almost literally throwing rocks at me for saying that. I hated PDF to a passion that's indescribable. And it wasn't until I realized, hang on, there's so many of them. In 1,000 years, chances are that even digital PDFs will be entirely readable. There's just too many important documents. And the format is so set. That's why it's important. Is it a superior format? Absolutely not. To do this in RTF or a new format would be much better. No question. EPUB, much better. No question. But this is at least a thing. Oh, we've got so many hands. Let's start with you, Peter.
Okay, I'd just like to speak in favor of the printed page because when I do a highly technical work, I tend to want to use multiple series of footnotes and multiple margin notes, color-coded, spaced appropriately so that they appear roughly on the page where the corresponding text is. And if you just have it smooshed into a digital format, I lose the ability to provide all of that extra value added for my reader. So, you know, the latex lover in me wants to be able to have control and treat the page as a page because I make design decisions at the page level that impact the comprehensibility of the material. Also, I'm going to have to take off now because I have a Northwestern Law Symposium starting in a couple minutes.
Good to see you, Peter. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, I'll catch whatever was left on the video replay.
Okay, it won't be as good as Mark and my weekend, I hope. But I mean, I hope it'll be as good as what I'm saying. Have a good weekend.
Okay, and happy birthday, Frode.
Thank you.
Bye, Peter.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Sorry, Raphael. Mark and I are celebrating with some friends tomorrow, so that was that reference.
And I was just thinking, well, there's a quotable moment, the latex lover in me, but let's not go down that path. One of the things I put in the sidebar was an interesting thing is that it gets back to the thing of PDF. There are a couple of things that have come out of some recent research I've been doing. Is just, although modern documents printed to PDF are relatively clean, they're still not actually clean. So what we need going forward is we need to have effectively, for want of a better word, we need the machine learning layer. So that's the body text of the document. So imagine, let's think in the academic sense. So the academic paper, so it's got, I don't want the authors, I don't want the sort of sales blurb from the conference, I don't want the page headings, I don't want the page numbers, I want the body copy, and probably without the possibly with the tables. I mean, but for a moment, no tables, no includes, just the text with no hyphenation. That's only there for typographic purposes. I want something the machine can understand, because the frightening thing, the further I look, is that I don't think people clean any text they put into machine learning or AI because it's
Mark,
too difficult.
It's so important what you're talking about. The first half of how you want to be able to specify what to read, but also PDF is so broken that sometimes even exporting from author and opening it in reader doesn't select the word properly. So it is a huge issue.
Yeah. The other thing I put in the sidebar is that I don't know if PDF allows for it, but it does occur to me that if I was say, making a copy, as you've done with the Future of Text, as it were the reference copy, I would want the visual meta printed in the end. If I'm a student, a researcher, just printing out a paper because I want to read it on paper, while we still can do that, I probably don't want to print the visual meta, and I'm paying 10 pence a copy for the paper. So I don't, it's something I can't find. I don't know if PDF allows for this, but it's almost kind of thing. It would be useful to have a flag saying, this is not.
Yeah. Skip the last page.
Print.
Skip the last page. But what you're also highlighting there is a pet peeve of mine is reading a newspaper article, and always start with some personal nonsense story. It's like Bob always used to shop at the local market, driving his red van, blah blah blah, and it says, and this was the end of the world where the nuclear explosion blew up the market. It's like there's always that heavy chunk of personal stuff in the beginning.
That's journalistic writing style.
Yeah, I would like a bit of ML to get rid of that. Tell me the news, please. Right?
Yeah.
And Chris Gutteridge had a great insight from his own PhD work, which is a very useful sentence to understand a scientific article, academic article, is the last sentence of the abstract. Right, so imagine if you have a conference proceeding and all you have is the headings and the last sentence of the abstract as a list, and you can click on the ones you want and they expand. So all this choosing what to see really is very, very important. We spend so much time getting rid of faff, don't we?
Well, yes, and the worrying thing is actually just this thing that the machine learning isn't clever enough yet, and I don't suspect will be for a while yet, to tell the difference.
That's why we need to tag it.
Yeah. So we don't want to be feeding it a bastardized version of the beautifully typographic stuff that it can't understand. It doesn't give a toss about ligatures. It doesn't worry about elegant hyphenation.
No, but what we can do, guys, is, for instance, for the Future of Text, we can specify for each section what the actual first sentence is, because PDF has an issue with that. So that could be part of the folder view. All these kinds of, how can we please the readers, how can we feed their curiosity?
Yeah.
Right, we can work on. Yeah, so we're running out of time. I have things for tomorrow and stuff. By the way, Raphael, I've been in touch with Vint regarding the NFT, and I've been in touch with Valentina, and it's a wonderful thing, very exciting, but there's also quite a few issues surrounding the actuality of doing it. So once I've talked to Vint a little bit more to understand his intentions better, then it would be really useful to talk to you about it.
Sure. No problem. Yeah, I just saw the message on Circle.
I was going to say, does this mean that an NFT means we've got to put Fred in a Ziploc bag for perpetuity, as the reference copy? Original packaging.
I will, hang on, I'll pause recording for a second. Yeah, back to recording. That was just a bit of personal stuff. Yeah, so what I think we have agreed, what I would like us to agree in this community is that, at least for a while, what we talk about in these chats is primarily how can we augment a reader's experience of the book digitally, while also providing for a paper substrate at some point in some way. So we can really do two things. One, help them navigate and view the document in the document, and also how can we help them take it into other worlds, such as Rome, Trail Hub? How can we deal better with citations? How can we deal better with concept mapping? But keep those conversations separate, because I feel they can sometimes get a little bit muddled.
Got it.
Sorry, you guys, I got to go, but Adam, I like very much what you said. Didn't have time to discuss. See you next time. Okay.
Jerry.
I look forward to it, Jerry.
Raphael, did you attend yesterday Fission talk?
Oh yes, I managed to get halfway into the
Well,
talk.
when the recording comes up, you watch it too. I think we really should, all of us, watch it and come back and discuss it. It was amazing.
Yes,
So,
that was great. And I think,
Yeah.
Frode, you're going to be on the 2nd, right? June 2nd.
On the 3rd, the 2nd is actually my birthday, so it's kind of funny. Not that it matters, but it's at 2 o'clock in the morning my time.
Every birthday matters. Come on.
yeah, and you have to be there. You have to be there. I have to stay up. Yes.
I realized something that changes with birthdays as we get older, and that is a birthday is not an opportunity to celebrate the person who's having the birthday, but to allow that person to celebrate their friends, which is an interesting kind of.
And now it's an opportunity for your son to celebrate you.
Yeah,
party time.
And as time goes by, there's less crying.
Yeah, time does go. Oh yeah, Raphael, while you're here, just show you the screenshot real quick that the rest of the guys saw, but just for this conversation. So what I realized while dealing with our last discussions is that table of contents is not an introduction to a book, which is what I thought it was, because it's not in the beginning, but we still have to decide on what the kind of top level overview of a book is to help people go along, because alphabetical lists are not that useful. So in the reader system, we have a way of folding it. And so I've thought about this basic interaction here, where when you move the cursor or you select text, there's a little bar at the bottom of the screen.
Okay.
One of them is to help people learn the fold, command minus, it says right there. But then we can do other things like I've realized, at least for me, and this was very contentious in this discussion, which was great, that going through a document, there's a lot of stuff I'm just not interested in. So I want to be able to press H for hide. We used different language earlier, but so that means that if you then do that, and then you go into the folded view, whatever you've hidden becomes a bit gray and it goes at the end. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So you then keep changing what you're seeing. But then we also have easy options for show similar articles based on basic machine learning, show only names, show this, show that, show whatever. So
Nice.
That's what I'm beginning to experiment with, that's all.
I like the one-letter shortcuts.
Well, that's the thing. When you're in reading mode, you don't need command key all the time because you're not writing, and that's a fun thing. And there we go. But we are happy with these chats being primarily about the book and how it can go into different environments. So when Gunther has more specific things about his world-changing bigger thing, it will be primarily how it relates to a book in and out, right?
Before the sidebar disappears, I just put something for Raphael, because I'm told I'm not allowed to show any more books on screen.
It's expensive, Mark. It's expensive.
I think Frode, I think it could be good to in all text around because the whole community is called the Future Text, which is a very ambitious name. But what you said is just a small subset of text, the printed text and the relationship to more like fixed the PDF-like documents and how to read it in different ways. So I think we who come here, we may project other things onto the Future of Text initiative, and in a way it's a bit frustrating, for me as well, to because different interactions and other ways of looking at text, and I'm not really meaning the free floating networky thing, but but there are other ways of viewing text as well. So to be very clear about what this community is about, because it could lead to confusions.
Yeah, I mean, I think
frustrations.
that's not
Because
only,
I feel that as well.
that's not only positive what you're saying, it's very, very useful, because I am stuck between two things, obviously. One is do stuff, and two is to be as open as possible. And we need to keep combining that. So what we may do is have one day where we're completely loose, but we have to say a little bit of context first, right? Because right now, Rome and all of that is very fashionable and useful, but it's not how you read a book. And since we are the future of text community producing a book, that should at least be one of them. That's all I'm saying. If you want to say on Wednesdays, let's say, let's have a chat about blah, blah, I would love to support that. So I'm not trying to dictate, I'm trying to carve out different spaces.
Yeah, I think that's excellent, and that is very. But it also, I feel what I feel frustrated about is when I read this like lines of thought book and see different ways of representing text, spatially in the book, very typographic rich, other ways of doing it, even on the fixed page.
It's not free flowing, is it? It has to have a layout to do that.
Yeah, and I have not said. I question the paragraph. But I don't question fixed text on paper. I question the paper size, page size, but not that it's fixed, not that it's beautiful, not that it's going to be preserved. And I feel that it's hard to discuss this here because it goes back to PDF. It's not. I don't think we should limit it to the preservation of PDF only. It should be slightly bigger than that, not the network fluffy thing, but the fixed thing.
I think, in fairness to Freud, I mean, one of the confusions of the PDF was, to a certain extent, one of the things that's feeding it at the moment, sort of partly via the work he's doing in author and things. You know, certainly in the academic context, it's where academe, or most of it, is stuck at the moment. Yeah. So I mean, say for better or worse, which is a world away from you know, lovely monographs and just beautiful typography and things, which I think a number of us here share a love of. But yeah, so the PDF can sometimes be a bit of a blind. It's not because it's important better. It's a pragmatism of where a large section of important human knowledge is basically gone to die, at least for the moment.
Have you seen Kingdom of Heaven?
No, film. Is this film? No.
What? You ignorant people. Okay, Kingdom of Heaven, you have to see it. It's really an amazing movie. It's getting a bit old, but it's special. I can tell you stories. However, towards the end of it, Saladin is taking over Jerusalem, big battle. And so our hero asks, you know, what is Jerusalem worth? Nothing. And then he turns around, everything.
Oh, was that the Sword and Sandals thing about the King of Jerusalem?
Oh, shush now. It's an amazing movie. Anyway, the reason I'm saying it is, and I'm really glad I get to make this point. Unfortunately, you don't have the dramatic context, but the PDF in this context is worth nothing and everything. The reason I say that is visual meta, the whole darn point of it is that everything should be encoded there. If you want to have a A3 style page for a specific layout because you're communicating a specific thing with specific flow, there's no reason it cannot be encoded in visual meta, even if the book is A4, right? Visual meta, it can say on page so-and-so, coordinates are so-and-so, tags are so-and-so, as long as it says it in a way that is preambled by dear human who's reading this. In Reader, which is the software we own, we've implemented it this way. But these are the values. If you want to do something more the same, you can do it that way. That's why I don't want you to get hung up on that.
We should use Tristram Shandy as an edge case.
Yes, that's a yes. Okay, so does that put you a little bit at ease, Adam, to the opportunities we share?
Yeah, I think we agree more in a sense, in spirit, than it may sound here. But there are things I want to push back on, even with what we're discussing here. So, but that's for the next discussion or future discussion.
But this is what I have been begging for literally 2 decades, exactly these discussions, because someone can come along in 20 years and watch this video and watch this discourse we're having right now and learn something from it. That's the point, right? You know, I want, if you guys desperately think that for something presented in the book must be AR, or the book is just a small part of it, you have to have a certain thing on the wall. Gosh darn it, we need to be able to make that happen. But I don't want it to be an MIT Media Lab thing that's just a demo. I want it to always also be beautifully wrapped up in this little thing for the future. That's it.
I think one thing is certain, that ever since the EPUB format or digital books started coming up, everybody has been saying books are gonna die, but it's still here. It's still gonna be here for a long, long time. Printed books.
Well, I must say, having tried to put, well, I made the mistake, admittedly, it was literary machines. I tried to turn that into an ebook, and it's very, very hard.
That is hard. So can I tell you all what I want for my birthday?
Right.
I desperately want to continue this dialogue. But this kind of dialogue is really, really useful, right? Where you say what I want, right? Because then we can map things. When we start talking about things, this is certain truth, then it's irrelevant. Truth kills creativity, right?
Mm.
So Gunther is amazing at highlighting underlying issues. Adam has really good ideas to where to go into places. Raphael has a design sense, well, the design agency and that perspective. Mark Anderson is very detail-oriented, I think is the adult way of saying it. But we are different people. This whole community has very different things. So when we can really clearly say, I want this, and we're not just ragging on people for not doing the same thing, which can happen, which hasn't happened with you guys, it's really, really quite wonderful. And Stefan, who is probably watching or who will be watching, I say thank you for pushing us. I hope we can, we may not agree on anything, but I don't think that really matters as long as we record our disagreements. So thanks, guys. I will have a hangover on Sunday, and I look forward to seeing you all on Monday. Because we're traveling, it may be difficult, but I'm going to make all the effort in the world to at least be there in an audio way.
I'm spoken for on Monday, I'm afraid, so I definitely can't make it.
Okay, spoken for. Wow, that's tomorrow. All right, have a good weekend, everyone, and
have a nice birthday, Fred.
Thank you. Will do.
Yes, have a nice birthday.
Jazz hands to finish. Yeah.